All right, so thank you for being here. It's kind of we were just at the keynote. I assume most of you were too. That's actually a pretty hard act to follow, I realized. After they introduced so many cool things, and I'm sitting there looking at it and saying, hey, we could really use that. That would have solved a lot of the challenges we're going to talk about here today. And so we're super excited about that. It was really interesting. In particular, I think that a lot of the new features that are going to be coming deal directly with improving the performance, which is something that we've struggled to do, and especially with large data sets and data that hasn't been cleaned, and we'll kind of go into some of that. So my name is Phillip Kiesling. I'm a staff engineer in the R&D operations, central operations group at VMware. And I've been a Tableau addict for a couple of years now, since we started using Tableau at VMware. So I actually liked it so much, it was so easy to use that at home I downloaded the public version, and I just scour the internet for any type of open data source or open data that I can find. It was kind of hard at first, but once you start finding it, it's everywhere. Of course, it's in a lot of different formats. Some of them are ugly, which I was really excited to see that new feature they announced, because it's really hard to reformat all of that. And so I tried to dabble in the Tableau public space a little bit when my daughters allow it. I have 2 little daughters, and they make it kind of hard to actually focus on that at home. Koom over here, have you ever seen me dress this nice?
No, he comes in shorts.
He's my boss.
Baggy shirts, and I don't know. Probably from the late nights in Tableau dabbling.
I took this as an opportunity to actually dress up. The only time I really dress like this is at funerals. Hopefully this goes a little better. We'll see. I never know. And
I'm Koom. I'm a director for tools and services at VMware. Our group responsibility is to deliver tools, services, and more importantly, solutions at various phases of the software development lifecycle that is used by the R&D and quality engineering group in their product development and product releases. Some of the tools that we deliver and support are test automation framework. Some other tools include application life management systems, and recently we're also responsible for building up a data warehouse solution to provide a 360 view for the R&D on all the product analytics around the product that is out in the customers and the type of reporting that they're looking for with several complex data sources. You may be wondering, personally, I'm originally from Singapore. So you may have, even though I've been here for 30 years, you may have picked up some Singlish slang. You can't really teach an old dog new tricks. But I do know that from our experience, whatever stage you are at in your career, whatever skill set you are at, Tableau allows you to really pick up the applications real fast, allows you to use it effectively, and that's what we're here to share with you in terms of our experience and our challenges and what we have done. Next slide.
So you can teach an old dog some new tricks.
Okay. Yes. With respect, with relative to Tableau, I guess.
I'll pay for that later.
All right. So today we're really super excited to be here to share with you our story, our journey. We feel that it's important to give you a little bit context of what we have gone through so that you can really understand or see the impact of Tableau and how it has really been a big game changer for us when we are using it for the work that we have done. Of course, our main goal here is spend more time on the demos, which is what we've done as we build up some of these challenging reports and dashboards. So hopefully you'll find them cool. But more importantly is hopefully you'll find that they are of value to you as you go back to your organization. Maybe you have similar challenges, and we will be very glad to share some of these dashboards and reports and so forth with you. Our main goal here at the end of this session, hopefully, is to really be able to share with you and show you some of the interesting insights and how Tableau can help us address some of the unconventional challenges that we have in an R&D environment, providing reporting for the whole R&D organization. And also, obviously, with that, show you how Tableau has really helped us win big, right? Using that Tableau as the applications for us to solve a lot of the problems. The key thing then at the end is that we will show you a few key takeaways from our experience, just a few, keep it to a few handful of bullet items. Hopefully they'll be memorable to you, but more importantly, as I mentioned, hopefully they are of value for you as you go back to your organization, and hopefully you will have see the same success that you have had with what we have done in VMware. So, picture this if you may. VMware has a very large R&D organization, multiple groups. When I started, we probably have about 4,000 or 5,000 R&D engineers, and now we have over 2-3 years double the amount of people in VMware, right? So if you may picture this, every group is developing fast, developing solutions of their own. They have their own test management system. We have up to 10 different test management systems. For some of you, test management systems are solutions that the R&D group use for their test planning, test execution, test reporting, test triaging, providing defects information as an overall system, right? So, disparate groups with various different systems, unscalable, especially 2-3 years ago. If we're going to continue to grow, it will be very difficult for us to manage, especially when we provide consistent when we need to provide consistent reporting around we manage a release to figure out what are the quality issues, how do we get the releases out in a very rapid fashion. So we were given the directives to roll out a centralized enterprise level application lifecycle management system. Very challenging for us in the sense that we have a very short time frame, and our R&D folks are very demanding. We have the typical massive, what we call DCD problem. They know what they are doing. They think they know everything. They can solve their own problem. They don't need us, right? And whatever they ask from us, they say, wow, why can't you do it in 5-10 minutes, right? So we have a very demanding R&D group, both from the developer side, from the QE side, as well as the management side. The type of reporting that they are asking for are very complex because, again, they feel that they can do anything on their own, right? As you know, these are R&D folks that can either go in and code, whether it's Java or C or whatever languages of their choice, right? So they ask for varying complex type of dashboard and reports around their software development lifecycle. And last but not least, we also have a very diverse group. When we put together this system with the reporting around it, we're not only going to provide data for an engineer or a manager. We are providing data from the top level down, from the VP down to the individual engineer. We are providing reporting for the release manager to be able to figure out very quickly what are the priorities, what are the quality issues. And we're providing the same level but with more detailed data for the managers, for the engineers to see the same data, where are the issues with more details, drill down if you may, right? So very complex, varying degree, and we must, and I repeat, the challenge is we must deliver production level type of reporting in a time frame that is consistent or part of the requirement of the release. Because in our environment, we have a release train that keeps going, and there are milestones along each of the release trains, whether we're in alpha, beta, functional complete, and whatnot. At each level of the milestones, they expect the services, the reports to support the type of decision making that they need to do. So if you don't meet the milestone, we don't create those services or reports, they're going to use something else. They can't wait for us, right? So we are in an environment where not only are they demanding, but we have to hit certain milestones for them to use it. time to market kind of, right? If they're in beta in 3 months and we cannot generate the report in the next week or so, when the beta is gone, that's it, too late, right? So that's the type of challenge that we have. That's the journey that we have when we started with this initiative, where we have to create, not only provide a centralized enterprise-level test management system, but we have to provide the supporting data and reporting around it.
So as you can see, we had a tough challenge on our hands, especially with the R&D folks. And I'm R&D, I'm an engineer, and I'm just as demanding, except that I don't really feel like spending all my time coding new dashboards in various languages, only to have to change them every time someone has a new idea. Because that's expensive, and that's really where Tableau comes in. So we had a challenge ahead of us to be able to figure out how do we model the software development lifecycle? How do we give value back to the organization? Because we hear the people saying, "Hey, we need these reports," but when we would ask, it was kind of like, "Well, I'm not exactly sure what we want to show." Something like this. So we thought, well, okay, that's good. We can start to go down that route, but let's see what's out there already. And it was a challenge. There's not a lot of, outside of academic papers and whatnot, there's not a lot of comprehensive models for software development lifecycle analysis, especially at the level that we needed it and using Tableau. Tableau, for example, if you do a Google search, most of the examples you find are sales and marketing examples. They're simple, they're oversimplified actually, and they're always using one data source, it seems. If they're using two, it's in a very, very simplistic way. And we had very, very big data sources. They're not simple. They're not clean and tidy. And so we need to be able to manage all of that and still present a report quickly to the users that is valuable to them. So the question was where to start. So we took up the approach of, we have an idea of what the users want, what they're kind of telling us they need, but they're not sure, and what we kind of have discovered and from our own intuition through reporting and being in R&D, watching these activities, we had an idea of where to start. So the key thing here was there were so many options available that we just had to pick one. We picked one and we went with it because our approach was this: iterate, iterate, iterate. So we picked a report. It was simple. It was just a bug count report, a table. We sent it out to the release managers, product leads, QE leads, developer leads, and we said, what do you think about this? Is this kind of starting to look like what you want? And we'd get feedback, and they'd say, yeah, but I'm really kind of interested in this. And this is going to be true with any report that you generate with Tableau. And once you see the report, even if they actually knew exactly what they wanted, they're probably going to say, hey, that's cool, but actually, now I think I want to see this type of data. So you really have to be flexible. And so the key to our success is that we, especially with Tableau, and we'll talk about this again at the end, is that it gives us the ability to iterate fast. It gives us the ability to send the report out, publish it to the Tableau server. They can go look at it. They can send us feedback. We can sit down with them and look at it and change things real fast and just give them the report on the spot that they want, rather than some of the homegrown solutions that we have where they need to wait literally a month, 2 months to satisfy a request for a new type of report because it's all written in some custom language. So with that, we're going to get to the cool part. I'll actually show you. We've got 2 demos. The first demo that I'll show you is kind of, it's based on what we started with, our initial challenge. And let me flip to it. And it's about the release. How do we measure the quality of a release? Now this looks pretty simple. This is the release execution graph for our supercritical release. And on the top, we see a simple set of charts. Shows us by test case priority, how are we doing for the entire release. On the bottom, we see the raw data. Engineers like raw data. This is product marketing. or executives, VPs. Engineers like the data. So this was a very, very good approach for us, this type of model, where we have the visualization on the top, the data on the bottom. And we can interact. These are two different worksheets, so we can actually have selection filters that highlight the data either way. In the middle, you see, we've actually taken these and we've fit it to a resolution. The dashboards we fit to a resolution that fits all of the projectors at VMware, from kind of the lowest end to the highest end, because we don't want it to be, look weird every time someone goes into a different conference room and wants to look at this. So that was actually kind of an interesting challenge, and that means that we have to fight for the real estate on the screen as well. So we have to be succinct in what we're trying to tell. And so here you can see we put the filters in the middle because they apply to both sides, rather than putting a bar on the right-hand side, which is kind of the default. And we also have the legend in the middle because we didn't have to take up all that space with the filters. So while this looks simple, there's a dirty little secret behind this. Our dirty little secret is that the data that we're pulling isn't clean. It's not aggregated. So we don't have pre-aggregated data. It's not tidied. And so we have to rely on Tableau to actually do that for us. And the advanced table calculations and advanced calculations that you can do really help us do that. And so there's actually a lot going on behind this chart to calculate the interesting, the data that people expect to see and the definitions of the fields.
May I take pictures?
Yes, feel free.
Yeah, don't worry, the names have been changed. You can see that we're trying to follow Tableau superstore, super critical release. So
yeah, feel free. Yeah, it's all random data anyway.
Plus, you probably know that all the sessions are recorded, so you can always go back and.
Yes.
Tableau this year has done a great thing to record all the sessions.
So there's a lot of data behind this. There's a lot of calculations that go on, and so but we made it look simple, I think. And this is something that the executives can look at. Now, let's take, for example, actually before I go on to the next one, see the grand total up there? One of the challenges that we have is counting distinct values. So when you're doing joins on your underlying databases, and you're joining things together, you start to get duplicate rows, especially on specific IDs. So in this case, we've got test instance IDs that we're grabbing from our test management system that we're trying to, the life or death system. And every time we join with another table, that gets duplicated. So we have to do a count distinct on those to actually get the real count of the number of test instances. Well, in at least 8.1, which we're still running currently, the grand total for a count distinct doesn't work. So if you actually just add a grand total column using the built-in Tableau feature, it doesn't work. You'll get a different answer every time. And so this is actually a separate sheet that we had to create, and so then we embedded it up there to be able to calculate the grand total on count distinct the way that we define it. And so that was kind of an interesting challenge that we ran into. And it was really, really difficult to debug because when the grand total is telling you something different than what you actually add up the columns to be, what do you do? So luckily there's always the raw data behind it that you can go and do your analysis with.
So you actually did all your calculations in Tableau. You didn't create a database and do some, data transformation, data views, or stored box or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah. So the question.
Can you repeat? Okay.
Yeah. The question is, did we do all the calculations in Tableau rather than doing like a staging database or summary tables and whatnot, and scrubbing the data? The answer is yes. For this, we did all the calculations in Tableau. We tried to do a little bit in the query itself, but queries are, it was already a very, very complicated query, so it took a long time until we optimized it.
But that's a great question, right? Because when you go into creating reports for the organization, you cannot really know exactly all the data that you need, right? You try to plan in advance the data, the type of aggregations that you want. But as you are working with the teams, you're going to get feedback that say, how about this? Now that I've seen this interesting data, can you also do this? Can you look at this, and which is derived from some of the other data, right? So sure, you can go back and do your query and build up your summary or whatever, right? But we, as I mentioned earlier, we have to really respond quick and show to the users, is this what you're really talking about? So Tableau allows us to leverage the existing data and do all those complex calculations just to be able to see, is that what you're really talking about? And then go into that. So it's the iterative thing that we're talking about, right? Christian talked about fast prototyping. So, I mean, it's really great that Tableau allows us to really quickly do it right in front of the users and say, is this what you're looking for? And then we create some calculations and whatnot, and bam, we show it, and then we can go back later on to make sure that it's done in a way that we can scale, maintain it, and so forth. But so it's a mixture of both.
Yeah. And with the, Koen mentioned we're doing this data warehousing project where it's a lot easier to pull the data into the data warehouse. And then as you put it into a data mart or a view, you can actually scrub the data there, do the preparations. When we started this in particular, we didn't have anything like that. We're pulling directly from operational databases. And that's why we had to do the tidying and the aggregations in the report itself.
There's another question there.
One more question. So when
Yeah.
you're doing these calculations, is there an easy way, I'm fairly new to Tableau, to take those calculations and reapply them to maybe different sets of data, like a format, copy and paste for like formulas? Or do you have to recreate those formulas all from scratch?
There isn't.
Repeat the questions.
Yeah, so is there an easy way to take a formula and apply it to a different data set? The answer is yes and no. At least in 8.1, it is, it's basically a tidbit of code, right, that you could go in there and copy it and then paste it into your new calculation and then change the data field that you're working on. I think that's about the extent of it. There's not like a...
Simple that you can just like reapply those.
Yeah, unless it's the same data field, then it would work. But there's nothing like a format painter if you're in the Word or Microsoft Office world, format painter where you can say, paint this, apply this same type of formula to this data as well. Yeah.
Keep in mind, we started this about 2 years ago, so we weren't before 8.1. I think we were doing 6 or 7, version 6 or version 7. But since then, Tableau obviously have added a lot of great features. One of the things that they can do right now is you can actually copy workbook or worksheets from one workbook from another, and you will try and replicate some of the stuff. So it has made life a little bit easier for us from that standpoint, but yeah.
You can also duplicate a calculated field so that you don't actually have to go in and copy and paste. So that you right-click on the field, say duplicate, and then you can go in there and rename it and then put your new data in there. And you can actually, if you have multiple data sources, you can actually copy, or even worksheets, you can copy a calculated field and paste it into another worksheet as well. Yeah. So one other trick that I want to point out here is this. You see on the bottom this last update? That's actually it was interesting. So what we wanted to do was our users wanted to know when was this data refreshed, because that actually is really important, especially if you're looking at the end of a release cycle. Maybe you're heading up to RC and you need all of the P0 test cases to be run and 95% of them passing. But when was the data refreshed? They're actually looking at this in real time. And so Tableau doesn't have a way to say, this is the latest refresh on your Tableau extract. So we did a little trick where any query we do to grab all that data and repopulate the data source, we actually do a sysdate. We just stick a sysdate in there, grab the sysdate in the query, and it's just part of the data, and then we display it on the bottom. So we actually have a real-time system, a real system time from the database server of when that query was run, and then thus when the data was refreshed. and we just put it in another sheet and put it on the bottom of the screen. So this is the high-level view. But as Koen mentioned, it's not just executives or high-level release management that look at this. We want to be able to provide drill down so that all of the engineering teams can use this. So drill downs are awesome. It's if you're familiar with them, it's a feature that it's called a dashboard action, and there's different types of actions. So if you hover over this, you see details about this. You get the nice tooltip. And for example, let's view this release execution, the test execution by project and priority. And so we selected P0. So now this is P0 data, and these are the projects in the test system. Now, we've gotten down to the director level or senior director level, depending on who owns the organizations. Because in our test management system, these projects correspond to specific BUs, generally, business units, that are responsible for developing specific areas of the solution. And so now we're at a new level. And this is more interesting to the middle management. They can start to see, how am I doing? How are my teams doing? How is my area doing? But it's using the same idea, right? Visualization on the top, data on the bottom. So it's real simple. So again, it makes it sound simple. This went through a lot of iterations. The filters allow you to still customize this. So you can save your customization on the web, and only so you can come back and view your data at any given time. And so what we actually came up with is kind of cool. It's a cookie cutter. We can actually take this workbook and apply it to a new product, and just change the query, which is almost the same anyway, and use most of this. So now we've set up a template for almost any type of product, and we just have to go in and change a few things here and there. But that wasn't done overnight. That was through a lot of iterations of getting something that was flexible enough to solve the needs of the users. So again, let's drill down some more. So now I'm a manager, and I want to see how I'm doing by project test area. Project test area is defined by what folder am I working in the test management system. And so we can see that we've got the test system projects on the left. So that, again, corresponds to a director, a senior director, someone who's running a product business unit. And the test sub-area folders, which are related within the test management system to specific groups. Sometimes even specific engineers have their own folders where they're working in. And so now we've gotten down to the engineering level. The first line managers, engineering level, they can actually go in here and look at, see how they're doing. We can come in, let's say, let me remove this filter. There we go. And let's say we're working on the LPTC work. So you can start to narrow it down using the test set folder path. If you have a specific, oftentimes, like if someone's working on guest OSs, they know that there's a term called GOS, G-O-S, that they can search on, and it takes them down to their folder level. Or you can, if you know specific folders, you can actually embed the slash in there and drill down. So this is, again, following the same protocol, right, or the same template. Viz on the top, data on the bottom. And it just works well, so we get a lot of good feedback on this. So now let's select this. And let's say that, okay, this is great. We see the execution details, but we look over here and we see a 13, almost 14% fail rate. Well, that doesn't seem so good. So we have another drill down. Let's go see what's impacting this area. They're failing for a reason. It's either automation problems or script problems, or it's a product defect. So let's say we're going to go and view the bugs that are actually impacting this this area. So we've got another drill down. Okay, so let's see here. Let's try this again. I picked one that didn't have any. There we go.
Try clearing your LPTC. So here's a good thing, right? Is in a normal process, when there are failures, R&D folks or QE teams are required to update their status, triage it, go into the system, put relevant information, whether it's defects and whatnot, right? This report is supposed to bring you to that level. Although we didn't intend to show that, but if you drill down and you find that you have failures and you do not have information, that's another thing that you can go back as a manager to your team and say, hey, what's up with that, right? I can't see what's happening. Are you actually triaging your failures and whatnot, right? So, some of these reports, while it's showing what you want to see, it can also be an auditing report to ensure that your organization is running efficiently or running based on what your expectations are. When you don't see data or you see inaccurate data, it could be because they are not doing it correctly, or maybe by mistake they enter some incorrect information. That's the great thing about dashboard reporting, is that everybody's seeing the same thing, everybody's seeing the same report, so there's no argument. It's just say, hey, what's up with this, and let's go figure out what we need to do.
Yeah, and so that's a yes, question.
So what kind of made you decide to go with Tableau? What was the trade-offs or the tools that you looked at in terms of pros and cons?
Right. So we'll come back to that question. So the question was, what made us use Tableau? How did we come to the conclusion that Tableau was right for us? We'll talk about that. We have a slide
in the
about that.
takeaways and later on
Yeah.
slide, we'll show you that. So let's keep that on hold.
Sure.
How many users are trying to access this concurrently on average?
So concurrently, that's a good question. This report is, this series of reports is one of our top 5 series of reports. I don't know if we have concurrent users, but it's...
We don't have concurrent users, but I can tell you that we have up to 1,000 unique users that is accessing all these reports. And for example, when Phil said that this is top 5, this type of report has about 2,000 hits in the last 3 months. Right? So you can get an idea of the usage from that standpoint. We'll show you a couple other reports that is the top and most used report and so forth, and we'll give you a little bit of statistic on that. But I think your question is, do we have a problem with performance, right? At this time, we did not get any feedback from users that there are issues. But that's a great point, because reporting is very important that they get the data right away and don't have to wait a long time. As today's session, you can see that they're continually stressing on performance. Again, this is R&D group, right? So if they see something that takes too long, they say, forget it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to do my own thing. So that's a very good question in terms of making sure that we keep the performance in check. And a lot of our table calculations, we are constantly monitoring it to see how much time it's taking, how much additional time it's taking from those queries you saw in the presentation this morning about all the sequential query. Tableau has the capability for us to look at those, doing a performance measurement. So we look at them and we try to optimize on some of those calculations.
Okay, let's do one more question, and then we'll try to hold them to the end, because we're running a little late here.
Data sources, you mentioned that you use data extracts. How do you get all different sources to your data extract? Do you do it daily in a job, and how do you manage all those into the creation of the extract?
Sure. So the question is, how did we manage getting multiple data sources into the workbook and the extract? That's an interesting question. One of the challenges that we have is that blending doesn't work.
Well, it works in a very limited sense. We're going to attend some of the advanced data blending session later today.
Yeah, we're
to find out
excited
more
to
about
see
it.
some of those.
Yeah.
I have never encountered a situation in our environment where blending works. And the reason is because of the tidying of the data that we have to do ahead of time, each data source has table calculations that are going on, and blending can't handle that, right? And so we can't really use blending. So what we do instead is we rely on filters to pass data between the data sources. So our data sources have something in common. In this case, it's the testing system has bugs associated with test failures with bug IDs attached. This system, which is coming from our Bugzilla system, has a bug ID as well. And so we can link on that. But the way we link on it is actually through an action filter that'll pass just the specific bug numbers to this other dashboard. And so we're actually not doing any join between the actual data sources. They're not a single extract, they're two different extracts. And we're actually just sending the narrowed down data into the other sheet that way. So let me keep moving here. A couple of things about this report before we get to the really cool reports that Koom's going to show with some of the more advanced stuff that we've done, is that we're applying two new things here that we haven't seen before. Number one is a heat map on the right. So this actually points out very, very quickly which areas have a bug that is impacting the testing. So blocked or failed test cases show up as a larger number. So we see this bug right here, which has a super long string as an identifier, is blocking or failing 24 test cases. So if you're heading up to your RTM or your RC build or something like that, and you've got a single test or a single bug that is blocking that many tests, that's probably one that you need to go fix. And so this is a quick way to identify the important bugs that are really blocking the testing efforts. And then on the bottom, what we've done is, so imagine you're in a meeting, you're looking at this, you want to see the actual data of that bug. You can Alt-Tab all you want, but instead we just threw this web object on the bottom, and it's a filter, and we just pass the bug ID as in the URL to the bug system. And if I had logged in here and I clicked on one of these, it would take me to it. And you can actually look at the bug and interact with the bug through this. And so a lot of people like it. Some people prefer to have a separate one, which Koom will demonstrate.
Yeah, so all in one screen, right? You're sitting with your developer or QE or your manager, and you're prioritizing what are our highest, most priority, blocking most tasks and whatnot. Look at the bug, click on it, look at the bug status, who has the last update, why can't we fix it? All the detailed information is right there on one screen. That's the goal, right? You drill from the very high level of the top release report down to an individual bug, the test that is affected, and what should you do about it, right? That's what we're trying to provide to our organization.
Yeah. So to summarize, what we've done here is we have the executive to engineering level drill downs for the real-time health of a product while we're developing it. We use the same theme, a cookie cutter theme, after we iterated a bunch of times and found something that tends to work for everybody. And you can apply this. We take this, we apply this to other products very, very easily. And we can see which products are in trouble, which features might be in trouble, ahead of time, early on, to detect where we need to focus dev or testing resources much, much sooner. Some of the things that we actually didn't show here, we've got so many charts. Koom kind of mentioned it, audit dashboards. So when we have issues with the PRs not showing up, or people aren't triaging PRs against test failures, we have reports that actually show which areas need to be triaged so we can have accurate data. We also have charts on R integration, which we're not going to show here. It was in the abstract, I know. But let me just kind of expound on that real quick. The way that we're using it right now is when you look at kind of the curve of bugs throughout a release cycle, it tends to follow a growth curve pretty closely. So what we did is we took the Gompertz function, and we apply that, and we have a parameter that we can adjust the asymptote and the offsets, and we apply that to try to figure out when are these bugs going to actually level off. And so far it's been pretty accurate, but it's actually a very interesting report that we weren't able to show here because we didn't have an R server. So I'll let Koom talk about the really cool stuff now.
Wow, I'm not sure it's really cool. But just to follow up on Phil's point, we have a lot of charts, but today we're showing you our top 5 most utilized reports. The reason we say it's top 5 is we track from Tableau server the hits that we get, and that's a good data for us to make sure that we know what reports we should work on, what are reports we shouldn't work on. So this one here is really the top view reports by the whole organization. This report has over 5,000 hits, in the last 3 months. So it's constantly viewed, and it's viewed by a diverse group of users. This particular report shows you the defects for the whole release at a glance. And so the top part gives you a trend. But the interesting thing about this report is you can say, oh, no big deal with trending. As we all know, when we're doing trending, we can either do snapshots to capture each week time data and be able to do that. In fact, before we provide this report to the organization, the release manager every Sunday has to do an Excel export of the data and keep it in his or her file, and then every week she would just map those data out. Now, and she take 2-3 hours to do that. Now she doesn't have to spend a single minute on it, right? But trending, it's important for any release, and the way we've done it is that we capture the defect, the life of the defect from the time it was first created, and just continue to track the defect for every activity change and the timestamp that goes with it. And we denormalize the data so that we can actually leverage it. And then we leverage Tableau advanced table calculation for us to do the calculation on a time slice, the status of the defect, whether it's open, but defects that need to be fixed, or defects that are coming in. The interesting thing is it gives you a trend, and then it also gives you a defect that are coming in on a regular basis. So you can see how you're doing. Not only are you fixing them, how much you're fixing, how many you need to fix, but what's the incoming? Because I need to catch up, which I'll show you another table that gives you a better detailed view of that. Now again, we start with the theme of overall release, where you, at a glance, from the whole release, you can see what's happening from a defect. This report is used to make decisions on what to prioritize, what are the key organizations that have defects that they have to work on, and look at the details around it. But the nice thing is, again, using the drill down, while you're looking at the high-level overall organization, I can always use the drill down to look at the VP. Now, the chart is updated to show for that VP, how is his organization doing? Now, one other thing that I'll point out is that with this particular report, we already have 2 sets of data source, the defect tracking data source and our company's LDAP data. We have leveraged both of them, and we have used Tableau, the data calculation, for us to really create the type of reporting structure that we want to report here. As you know, if you work on LDAP, right, every organization have different hierarchies. Some have more VPs than directors, depending on which organization you're at. So if you just look at the LDAP data, you won't be able to just say, give me hierarchy 1, 2, 3, because it may not come out the way the organization wants to manage their groups and in terms of defects. So now you can see that the drill down is for the VP level, right? And you may have seen that when you hover over it, we have created hyperlinks or URL links that they can go in and look at the details of the defect. One of the key things in an R&D organization when you're looking at reports, or before you have a consistent set of reports, everybody has their report, and when you go tell someone, hey, if you got 8 priority 0 defects, he will come back and tell you, no, I don't have any. According to my report, I don't have any defect. And then you start your conversation, what's your query? What's your query? How do you do it? And all that kind of conversation is really taking up unnecessary time. What you really want to focus on is, I got 8P0, what should I do about it? By allowing a drill down to look at the exact defect, there is no doubt or question. You can dispel those conversations right away. Like, okay, you got 8.0. Let me click. Here are the 8P0. It shows up right there. There's no argument, right? What query you have, that doesn't matter, because it goes right into the defect tracking system and show those 8 defects. Right there, you snip the bud and say, no, you got 8P0s, right? So that's another key thing. The other thing is that, as I mentioned, right, the way we are doing the trending is we capture the defect from the beginning it was created to the snapshot today, right? So if you can imagine, if there was a bug that was created 3 years ago, and if we plot that graph, most of the graph would probably look like a hockey stick, because 3 years back you're going to have less, and as you're approaching the release, you're going to have more, right? And you kind of really don't want a graph that is hockey stick, where most of your data in the last month is all compressed into one small real estate of your display. Again, Tableau has a good feature, which I'm sure most of you know, is you can create a separate timestamp filter, put that filter in so that you can really adjust the time window without affecting your table calculations. So that's a important thing, and we can always adjust the time window not to worry about the accumulation and the aggregate that it's doing. So that's one of the most viewed reports in terms of the release that they can look at. And again, you can look at the drill down from the VP level, or you can actually look at the drill down from the manager's level, right? So now the graph is updated for that particular manager and the bugs for that manager. Before, when you click on this, it will show all the whole VP, all the bugs with the drill down, right? So again, the key thing here is the theme always is high level down to the individual detail that you can actually manage at the level that you are at.
How do you get that access? How are you applying that role level security? When you give access to individual directors or VPs?
The question is, do we apply access rights to the VPs and so forth?
Yeah. Do you apply role level security? Do you apply role level security in the database?
Okay.
Or in Tableau?
Yeah, so the question is, do we apply row-level security in the report or in Tableau or the database, right? Because these data are somewhat, it's for whole R&D, we don't apply any access level. Everybody can look at this. You can always, in our organization, you can always go into the defect tracking system and look at whatever it is. So at this point, we don't have to deal with that. But I can see that you may want to, think about that and figure out how we can do that. Right?
And some of the audit reports that I referred to are restricted to just certain people, certain managers at the Tableau level, because people can read those the wrong way. We don't want people looking at this and saying, "Hey, this is going to be your performance review," right? So, but this type of data is transparent, and we really encourage a transparent environment at VMware with our data, because there's nothing to hide. If you need help, we'll get you the help you need in order to make the release, right? It's not an indicator of you necessarily doing a bad job. We've got about 10 minutes.
10 minutes? Okay, I'm going to go through this pretty fast. This is the second most viewed reports for the release for the whole organization. As Phil mentioned, R&D folks, engineer likes tables. So we can't get away from the tables, right? So this shows, again, a count by organization from the VP to the individual managers, the defects that they have for their organization. But more importantly, the key thing about this report is it gives you a count for the new reopen defects, incoming defects for the last 7 days. But this is an enterable parameter. So if you want to know how your organization is doing for the last 30 days, for example, obviously you can just come here. And the data will be updated for the last 30 days. Now this is Again, utilizing Windows table calculation, because we're capturing the live of the defect from the time it started to now as snapshot, we are able to do this. The good thing about this is each organization can see how they are performing in the last X number of days. And they can see how well they are addressing the defects from resolving them by the resolve column. And then they can also see how many new bugs are coming in. So we provided a throughput, right? It's a very simple linear calculation. The throughput is just a difference between the amount that you have resolved versus the amount that is coming in based on the last number of days. But it's very powerful because if you have a negative throughput, that means you're fixing bugs faster than the bugs are coming in the last 30 days. If you have a positive throughput, that means bugs are coming in faster than you can fix them. So, as a manager or a VP, you should be able to, respond to say, hey, I better do something about it, especially when you're closer to a release milestone. The other thing that we use in this report is because you can see the various formatting. One of the limitations of Tableau is if you use these fields as measures, the formatting is a little bit limited. All the measures are, the formatting is, you can't adjust individual column size. You cannot adjust individual shadings. But because it's a table, you want to make it a little bit easier to read. So we use dimensions instead of measures. But one limitation in using dimension is you cannot do a total. You can't use the grand total. So if you are looking at the total for the VP or the whole release, this report doesn't allow you to do that. However, there's a workaround. We use a hierarchy. We created a hierarchy. So if you want to see the whole release, how the whole release is doing, you can collapse the hierarchy from the LDAP that we have created, the reporting structure, and you see the whole release. Right? This is for the whole release, the total. Right? One bad thing about using dimension is the formatting doesn't adjust too well when you're doing collapsing for dimensions. The other thing is, if you are a VP, you can look at your VP aggregate, right? We can expand it, and you can see for the VP what is the data. And then so the VP can go back to his organization and say, what's happening? So these are all the VPs and the aggregate total that you have. Again, we provided URL links so that they can look into the details again. So let me, you can see on the right-hand side, there is some instruction to say, click this to see the details of the Bugzilla. So when you click on any individual, appropriate URL links will pop up for the incoming new, the resolve, and whatnot, so that, again, you can go into the defect tracking system and see the details of the defects. I think we're going to try and wrap up a little bit from here.
Take it back to the presentation, please. There you go. All right. So as you can see, or hopefully you saw, that there's a lot of value we've brought to the R&D organization here. This is the first time we've had a real-time view of product health from the beginning of the release to the end of the release. And it's very, very powerful. People are using it. We're getting a ton of hits on it. They're using it to make data-driven decisions, and that's the key. That's our goal, is to be able to enable the organization to make data-driven decisions. One of the big wins for us here was that we were able to create things fast. We were able to get the ball rolling, and the adoption took off. So if you actually look at it, it's exponential growth. It's the hockey stick approach. At some point, that'll stop because we only have so many people in the organization, but currently, it's got a great trend, and it's expanding across VMware. We've got some people from corporate IT here; they're using it. We're using reports for operations, and it's all based on Tableau and the features that we have actually shown and provided to some of these teams. In fact, we actually manage some of these teams' reports for them. So back to one of your questions over here, why did we choose Tableau? So it's kind of a wrap up here. So we chose Tableau, we told you that, obviously we're at the Tableau conference, but the reason we chose it was because it was so easy to get started. So we downloaded the trial, And we had a lot of different options, but we downloaded this trial, and we got going right away. It was so easy to get started. And you had a professional-looking report in front of you that you could actually be proud to present to people, and they were wowed by it. And there was no development effort at all going on. Nobody had to go in and change code. Nobody was waiting 30 days for an enhancement request. Now, it doesn't always stay that simple and that easy. It can get complicated very fast, which is why those simple charts and tables, I said, are actually pretty complicated underneath. But it really gives people the fast bang for the buck, which is really, really great. The drill down capabilities, that was one of the main requirements. Everybody wanted to drill down into the data. Tableau does that beautifully. The advanced table calcs and just the table or the calculated fields in general are super helpful, especially if you don't have tidy data, if you need to do those aggregations because you don't have a data source that's already done. And publishing and sharing, which is a key requirement for everybody, is super simple. I mean, if you've never done this and you have a Tableau server or you want to download the free trial, just publish it. It's a few clicks of a button. It's fantastic. And then you send the URL out and people can look at it. So some of the key takeaways as we wrap up here is one of the things that, there's an overwhelming amount of data out there. So what do? We were faced with this problem. We had the challenge. We didn't know where to start. But it didn't really matter. Just start somewhere. Pick it, go with it. Get the feedback. Get it fast. Deliver quick, deliver often. You'll get the feedback. People are going to start to ask for all kinds of weird things. It's going to go in weird directions, but go with it because it often ends up really bringing value. Sometimes it doesn't. You have to say, so sorry, we're not going to keep going that way. But we have gotten a lot of value just from being able to very quickly iterate, even in a single meeting, a sit-down meeting, iterating with the end user and saying, they say, we want this. So we say, oh, okay. We drag something over there and it's there. Well, that's awesome. They're super impressed. We look good. So it's a win for everybody. And so those are kind of the key takeaways, I think, from our experience. And personally, from my experience, it's really gotten me excited about data and Tableau and visualizations and data-driven decision-making. And it was actually one of the driving factors that got me into the data warehouse aspect of the organization that Koum is running. And so that we can actually visualize the entire, not just the software development lifecycle, but the entire product lifecycle outside of VMware as well as inside.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up, because we're running out of time, if you use Tableau and you can create this, it will make you look great as an individual that you can deliver that is being used by the organization. Thank you. Yeah.